afternoon. I'm Katie Hines, and today we're speaking with the Salvation Army Metropolitan Division's experts on disasters, Major David Dahlberg, Major Enrique Azuaje, and Akia Harper. We know that every disaster is personal and that the effects can ripple through a person or a family's life. Today we'll be discussing different kinds of disasters and the Salvation Army's response. Before we start, a couple of notes. Thank you for joining us on Zoom. Our viewers on Zoom can post questions in real time in the Q&A section. We'll be watching those on this laptop and we'll get those in as we are able. If you're interested in more information on how to support our programs, please reach out to your local gift representative. So to start, thank you each for being with us for this roundtable discussion today. Before we jump into the heart of the discussion, let's give our viewers a little bit of your background. Major David Dahlberg, you are the Divisional Director of Emergency Disaster Services with more than 3 decades focused on disaster response, provided training across the world, and served at Ground Zero for many, many months. Akia Harper, you are the Director of Emergency Assistance Case Management, and more than a decade in social service support work. And Major Azuaje, you are the General Secretary, which means you are our second in command here in the Chicago Metropolitan Division, overseeing operations for 28 Corps, 3 facilities, and emergency disaster services. So a lot to get to today. Major Dahlberg, let's start with you. Okay. The Salvation Army isn't top of mind for the public when it comes to disaster response, but we've responded to disasters since the early 1900s. How did EDS start, and what types of disasters do we respond to?
Actually, EDS began when the Army in the United States began in the United States at the same time the Army was here, because we've always been a part of disaster responses. Historically, probably the largest single event we had nationally was the Galveston hurricane in 1900. Interesting, actually at that time, hurricanes were not even named, so it was just simply the Galveston hurricane. One of the things that really struck me about the ministry of the Salvation Army in Galveston was the incredible impact of the event itself. Some 8,000 people died as a result of that storm. And the truth is, no one knew quite what to do or how to really help people. It was beyond imagination at that time. And there was a wagon drawn by horses that was called a funeral wagon, where all the remains would be brought to that location and placed on the trailer. And the thing that really struck me was the Salvation Army was present at that location. We were a number of other places in the city, but at that location in particular, where as people came by missing their loved ones, mourning their loss, we were present just to be with folks at a very critical time in their life, a very difficult time in their life, and that was full of pain and agony, but there was a sense of presence. And that's really what the Salvation Army is about, and has been fulfilling the whole concept of being present in times of trouble and crises. We practice ministry of presence in the very simplest ways to really lift people up and to help them at these times of real struggle.
And that can look different from disaster to disaster, correct?
Absolutely.
At the very basic levels, 2 of the most recent responses I know were the Chemtool fire in Rockton that you responded to, and then also the DuPage County tornadoes. Can you explain what EDS did on the ground there for several days, too?
Sure. Well, let me just start with the tornadoes. One of the things we have to be very careful about is we never want to find ourselves in a position where we become a challenge for the local situation. We need to be helpful, not hurtful. And so we're very careful about entering an environment, number one, that may not be a safe environment for our volunteers to be, and we just want to really be careful that we're part of the support and answer at that time. So we have what we call rapid response units that we deploy to the area to assess what may be needed, what we may be able to do as it relates to the tornadoes. Now, the Rockton fire was a very different situation. We were called upon by the Rockford Emergency Management Office to respond, to provide hydration, snacks, and meals throughout a 4-day operation. And what that looked like for us organizationally was that 24/7, we had not only to have staff and volunteers on site, but we have to have menus operation throughout that entire time period. So it was a real challenge for us, but I want you to know we have some of the greatest volunteers you're going to find anywhere in the world right here in Chicago. And folks just came along and opened up their schedules to be available to us, and we were always able to have 2 to 3 volunteers constantly serving at that location. There were some 80,000, yes, I want to get the numbers right. There are some 80 fire departments that responded to the event. All trying to coordinate. It was not an easy fire to fight. It was really a challenge. There were safety issues in terms of quality of air that we had to be very careful about. So in this kind of event, it's very, very different because of the practical needs of everybody involved as well as our own staff and volunteers.
Absolutely. And if I remember correctly, I mean, that was a warm day too, so one of the big things you had was the bottled water, the cold water, the keeping them hydrated, fed, and then also being there for support.
Yeah. Well, and we provided over 30,000 bottles of water throughout that event, as well as over 12,000 meals were served in that 4-day period.
Wow. Well, in IKEA, you know, we say every disaster is personal, but we know that not every disaster is what we might think of as a natural disaster immediately. Can you speak to the other types of events that can have a disastrous impact on an individual or family?
Oh, absolutely. Major helps respond when it is a larger crisis and multiple households are impacted. But we know that, you know, some of those disasters happen on a smaller scale. It could be a family fire or a flood happens in the household. Sometimes there's a loss of a family member or some extended medical crisis that happens. And a lot of families, as we all know, are one paycheck away from some sort of personal disaster in their lives. So the Salvation Army tries to be there and help families through those moments of crisis.
Well, and I would ask you and Major to jump in on this one. How does the Salvation Army help?
You know, emergency assistance is one of the most important tasks in what Salvation Army invests all the resources in order to provide assistance to the victims or survivors, but also to the first responders. That means that emergency assistance becomes one of the most important and crucial plan that we activate when disaster appear. We help those in need with supporting recovery effort, hope, and healing. And that is demand a lot effort and work. But the most important thing is the emergency assistance consists of providing vital resources until the healing is complete. And the varieties of this help is food assistance, hotel, clothing voucher, on case by case. In this case, IKEA can provide more information about how the case management assistance is activated during the emergency disaster. Maybe you can give more information about that.
Absolutely. So our remit is to help families in those short-term crisis moments and also help them and provide some long-term case management. So as Major mentioned, some of the things that we provide could be rent assistance, utility assistance, food pantries operate to provide and help supplement household food budgets. We can also help when there is a medical assistance need. Many times there's clothing that families need to replace. We can help with furniture to help them in that short-term crisis moment. And then we have programs like our Pathway of Hope that offer this longer-term support for families, that we can walk alongside them as they make goals for themselves and help to rebuild that sustainability. in their lives.
Yeah, and part of the emergency assistance is this is a system, very dynamic system that start with not just physical resources or financial assistance, but the human assistance. That's the most important thing, that we consider the emergency assistance as a part of the system that will bring relief, restoration to the victims, but also helping the first responder during that time.
Absolutely, and you really touched on it. I mean, it might look different for everybody. If someone comes in, we talk about the barriers to self-sufficiency and identifying those in Pathway of Hope. Could you speak to maybe some of the situations that you see that our clients come in with, and maybe one thing that has put them into this position?
Oh, absolutely. As you mentioned, our families are going through so much, and that was happening before COVID, but especially now. That families are, we're seeing families that are multiple months behind on their rent and utility payments, and they are fearful of being evicted of this home that they've built. And so that is part of how we sit down with those families. We talk through what they've experienced over the last few months that put them in this situation. And at that point, we try to identify different resources, different programs that we can offer as referral, offer as direct assistance, just to try to help that family feel more confident in their situation, and that they have a plan going forward.
Absolutely. And just a note again, viewers on Zoom, you can send us questions. If you have questions for either of the majors or Akia on disasters, we would love to get those in. We'll answer those in real time as we get them. If you're interested in more information about our disaster programs, our emergency assistance, you can head to our website. You can also contact your gift representative. Let's talk a little bit, going back to EDS, Major, about the critical role that emergency disaster services here at the Salvation Army played in the City of Chicago's COVID response over the last 18 months. Can you speak to what your team did and how quickly you sprung into action?
Well, what was very interesting from my perspective was that we had been planning with the city for a major event to occur for well over 3.5 years. And we were just gearing down towards a major exercise that was going to take place just prior to the outbreak of COVID. So theoretically, we were well placed, but all of a sudden now reality takes place. And reality is a very different place than theory. So one of the first things that happened was requests came out, we were missioned by the city to provide very specific kinds of activities and support. As an example, we were named by the City of Chicago as their lead agency in mass care, which was a real honor for the Salvation Army, but it was also a heavy responsibility for our organization as well. It entailed providing meals. First of all, there was clear that there was going to be a rather large group of single individuals throughout the city who would not have access to going out and purchasing food for themselves, not having resources available that they normally would, and not having anybody to watch out for them. Those were the folks that we were really targeted to serve. And so over the first 4.5 months of our operation, what we call phase one, in that program alone, we provided over 260,000 meals for that group. In addition, we supported the expanded operation of homeless centers throughout the city. What occurred was the city realized immediately that they had to expand their homeless shelter system simply because of the distance required that would need to take place between individuals staying at the shelter. And so they had to add 6 additional shelters, and they asked us to take on food support for those shelters. So from that point on, right from the beginning, we provided 3 meals a day at the 6 shelters, again, well over 190,000 meals through the operation. This may sound like a lot, and it was a lot of hard work, but it was all made possible because of our volunteer base. Incredible group of people that our biggest single concern organizationally, and I think our concern was shared by a number of other voluntary agencies, was during a real crisis, particularly a pandemic, will volunteers really risk coming out and supporting our operation? We didn't have an answer to that question immediately, but what we learned very quickly, folks joined us as we had need for additional support, and we had upwardly of 100 people in our facility. We had taken very clear caution to protect everybody that came in and were assigned tasks, but we were very fortunate. We had no known positive situation among any of our volunteers because of the care that we provided and because they were very careful to operate under our auspices and our plans as well. So I think the Salvation Army played a major role in supporting the city of Chicago throughout this entire event.
Those volunteers did everything from cooking the food that was served to delivering it. I know that there were also people showing up with donated PPE. I seem to remember that. I mean, they
Yes.
really made that operation run.
Absolutely. It was really exciting to be a part of. We were just really honored to be in the middle of this activity and to see it all come together. And really what it comes back to is that ministry of presence. Even though we did not have a lot of direct contact with folks that we were serving because of the protocols we had to do to protect everybody involved, people would wave from the windows of their apartments just to say thank you for bringing the food to us. So that physical presence was really very, very powerful. And it really is that ministry of presence that matters more than anything.
And one need that I recall you recognized during this was the need for support, mental health affected, as people were in isolation during this time, as people were worried about potential job loss, as there was a lot going on. You set up an emotional and spiritual care hotline. Can you speak to that part of it as well?
Well, we realized very early on that there would be support needs that material response would never answer. And so we were able to initiate a 800 calling number just for people, just to be able to talk with somebody, to have somebody understand their frustration, their concerns, their fears. If I could identify one single situation that epitomizes what most people were experiencing, it was the unknown that created fear in their life. And just by being able to talk with somebody, oftentimes folks would say, can you pray with us before we go? That was really an honor and privileged moment for our staff and our volunteers who handled this 800 number. It was a 24/7 number. Number of people folks would familiarize themselves with the number, and they'd call in periodically, and some were calling in daily just to have someone to talk to. Salvation Army became a very special friend to a lot of residents in the city of Chicago during the pandemic.
Pandemic's not done. I mean, we know that it still continues. We know a lot of families are facing potential fallout. We know that the eviction moratorium here in the state of Illinois is now set to expire on October 3rd. Major Ezwahe, how is the Salvation Army preparing to essentially help people through a possible wave of evictions here coming up?
Yeah. This is a very critical moment in the middle of the pandemic that we are still helping families since the past year with emergency assistance in many ways. The past year, we distributed approximately $2 million in rental assistance in the Chicagoland area. That means that with this new situation about the moratorium of eviction, Salvation Army is still committed in order to prevent homelessness in the city. That means that we are activated since the past year. We are activating a plan in order to support families and children and individuals in order to prevent homeless situation. We have an excellent system in Chicago, in the Chicago area that provide, if that situation is coming to be true and affect families, we have excellent emergency shelter system that will support families. That's as part of the emergency assistance. But also we'll continue helping families with rental assistance, but also food pantry. That means that around the Metropolitan Division, we have 28 core plus 7 institutions that all of them, they are activated in order to provide support. That's not, it's just a physical support or housing, emergency housing, but also we are talking about emotional and spiritual care. That means that we are praying as a Christian organization in order to families find protection in the middle of this situation. And Salvation Army is alert, and again, it's in order to keep the family in a safe place that they will continue running the normal life. Back to the school for children will be a challenge if this is the moratorium of eviction will be a reality. That means that Salvation Army is activated in, again, all 28 core case management system, emergency disaster services in order to provide relief, support in those circumstances.
And that's something that if people are watching, they can help with, correct? They can call and make a donation to help us help people stay in their homes, correct?
Yeah, I believe that the support of the donor has been sustainable from the past year or since the past year when the pandemic started. And I believe that the consistency of this donation will be, again, continue. We are exhorting, calling to the donor that please help us during this process. Pandemic is not just affecting health, but it's affecting the level of poverty in our area of influence where the ministry operate.
And one of the things you're doing at Kia, our caseworkers at the Corps know the emergency assistance process, how to distribute, but they're also helping to inform our clients on other resources that are available to them, correct?
Oh, absolutely. We consider our cores as a one-stop shop so that individuals can contact the Corps and access a lot of different programs and services. So they can work with the caseworker to get a referral for information on how to appeal to their landlord if an eviction is pending. That they have access, we can get them to the CDC website with these standard forms that they recommend that you share with your landlord. Additionally, we can screen them for the various programs that we are running for emergency assistance. As Major mentioned, we have been very blessed to receive multiple grants, and other foundations have reached out. We're currently partnering with another agency to provide emergency food and shelter programs. So that's funding that we can help with 1 month rent or 1 month of utility. But with the help of other donors, we can actually expand that level of assistance. And so there were times during earlier in the pandemic where we were actually able to help families with up to 3 months rent. And so that is always something we want to continue to be able to provide at all of those different locations. As Major mentioned as well, each location has a caseworker, but also has a minister, an officer there available for that spiritual and emotional needs piece as well.
Yeah, and another piece in this process is Salvation Army has provided through all the social media platform and communication pieces information that Salvation Army is available to support families during this process with resources in terms of physical housing, but also in the emotional and spiritual care. That means that we are activated. Again, I believe that the key word about emergency assistance is we have already a system. That system is very effective, focusing family needs in order that they can be stable in the middle of the crisis.
We're prepared.
Yeah, we are ready.
Prepared to help. Absolutely. And again, if you have any questions for us on Zoom, please submit those in the Q&A section. And if you're interested in more information, please reach out to your local gift representative. Let's speak a little bit, going back to the 28 core community centers and the programs. You know, one of the things that that the Salvation Army is really skilled at, and you said, Major, that the systems are in place, adapting. And we could see new needs arise as this pandemic continues. Can you speak to how the staffs are prepared, how your department is working to just be ready for what could be the next crisis?
Oh, absolutely. That is part of my job, to make sure that each of our caseworkers is fully aware of different resources and different events that are happening in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic. That any news that we get about the eviction moratorium or about other resources, say through NICOR Gas or ComEd, offering some additional assistance for families, we definitely make sure to spread that word out through our core, provide flyers and instructions on how families can apply to state emergency assistance opportunities as well. And yeah, we work alongside them. They have been fantastic throughout this pandemic. Our workflow had to change drastically. And that is one area in which our caseworkers are phenomenal, that they are flexible and that their entire goal or their mission is aligned with the Salvation Army mission, which is whatever we can do to serve our community, we will do. And so if that means meeting with people over the phone, if that means setting up a Zoom meeting or something so that we actually get a chance to sit and speak with that family, then that is exactly what we'll do. We've been happy that we've been able to start to open our facilities again, offer this one-on-one opportunity to sit with a caseworker, and that we're able to expand other opportunities at the core level as well.
Absolutely. And we have several questions from the audience. I'm going to get to these right now. Major Dahlberg, pivoting a little bit, we received a question. The audience would like to know about your involvement at Ground Zero. It's on September 11th. We just recognized the 20th anniversary, and what your thoughts are on that kind of 20-year milestone.
Well, actually, my wife and I traveled to New York City for the 20th anniversary. Had not been back since the event itself. And it was a very sacred experience for us. I have to be very honest, it was not an easy experience, but very important. In terms of the opportunities to serve and minister, the Salvation Army had an incredible program that was literally developed minute by minute overnight. And it really represented serving, at the request of the city of New York, serving all the staff and personnel who served at Ground Zero Medical Examiner's Office and other activities and facilities throughout the city of New York. And literally we served 24/7 for just under 9 months straight without a break. Christmas, Thanksgiving, you name it, the Salvation Army was there providing meal service, hydration, but more importantly than even those tangible needs that were very important, that ministry of presence once again was very, very powerful. I was privileged to serve with the Army from national headquarters. At that time, we were the National Disaster Services coordinators, and my job specifically was to coordinate leadership personnel on shifts took place every week to provide good quality leadership from the Army to oversee its program to make sure we could accommodate and complete the tasks we were missioned to do. And it was really an incredibly powerful situation well over 3 million meals were served throughout that operation. But again, it's far more than just a meal. It was the care and love that was shared and experienced. We had family members who lost loved ones at Ground Zero come and volunteer with us, gave their lives at a very difficult time, but wanted to do something in the memory of their lost loved one. So it was a powerful experience. I can honestly say it's an experience that will live on in my life as long as I live.
Can you tell us too about the restaurant revitalization program?
Sure, be happy to do that. It was an interesting program. First of all, the City of New York Restaurant Association was quite upset for a period of time with the Salvation Army because they thought we were taking business away from their restaurants, understanding that there were some 3,000 restaurants that were directly affected by that event. So there were some realistic concerns and needs, a lot of loss of business. There were 120 some restaurants that could not even reopen. So it was really a challenge. And as a consequence, we were, the first day or two, we were challenged inside of our own organization to take a look at really what was happening versus criticism that was coming our way. But when we were able to begin to talk about it, we scheduled a meeting with the Restaurant Association, and as an outcome to those meetings, the Army agreed to purchase initially 5,000 meals a day and then up to 8,000 meals a day that we were able to serve throughout our system, providing actually a much larger menu than we were able to provide before that time. What was really neat for me, I was present during the last week at Ground Zero when the Restaurant Association came, and for over an hour and a half, some 80 restaurants took time to acknowledge the Salvation Army and the fact that we actually saved their business that would have gone under because they just didn't have the patronage that they needed to keep open. So once again, it wasn't a plan on our part ahead of time, but I think it just reflects on the fluency and the ability of the Army to respond to whatever the need may be, understanding that far more than those who actually were at Ground Zero were dramatically affected by that event, and yet continue today, as I do, to carry the reality of what that experience was about.
And emergency disaster services and social services certainly go hand in hand. You do not operate in silos. Can you speak to how EDS works with emergency assistance?
Oh, I'd love to. The reality is we're one Army. And I can honestly say here in Chicago, we not only practice that, but we live that. And IKEA and her staff have been incredible in terms of supporting. We respond to events, but be assured that when an event is over, no longer in the headlines or on TV, that disaster for the majority of those people never goes away. And so the needs go on, and because we're a response part of the Salvation Army's disaster services, for people to gain the help and support that they need, we need the backbone of the Army, which really is that continued service. So I really think it'd be important for folks to hear about service extension as well, because it's not just the city of Chicago that we serve here.
Absolutely. That is a really good point because, yes, we've got our 28 core locations located within the city of Chicago and our service area here in Metro, but we also partner with wonderful township offices and fire departments in communities where we don't actually have a Salvation Army core building. So families really anywhere, if you need assistance, you can find your local Salvation Army representative in that case, and their staff located at the township, social service agency, fire department, police department, And they have agreed to become Salvation Army volunteers in that moment. So through them and through their works, we're able to still support the families in those communities.
Absolutely. Well, pivoting, it's hard to believe, but we are 100 days out from Christmas. Today, Major Dahlberg, we know that EDS will be assembling some much-needed food items for those in need. IKEA, our social services department, is certainly already gearing up for the Angel Tree program. If you would like to start and speak to, what we're looking at in terms of the need for these food boxes that you and your team will put together, and then where those will go.
Well, this year we will be producing at least 15,000 food boxes, possibly more, based on the needs that are realized. And those food boxes are intended to provide a Christmas dinner for a family of 4. And we really do focus on that time together as a family. We really encourage folks to utilize the resources in those food boxes. It's a well-balanced meal, a healthy meal, but it also gives family a time to come together and sit around a table and to share together as a family at a very important time during the year. Families who are hurting on Christmas Day, that hurt doesn't go away. But just hopefully to take a break at a moment in time when they can just sit back and really be a family together around a dinner table is very important. And I believe the Salvation Army, through its Christmas food box program, provides that opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. And we have so many families who not only need food assistance, but then they also need assistance providing a Christmas for their children. And so we definitely recommend our Christmas signups are going to be starting very soon. So folks can reach out and see how they can register for that Angel Tree program in their area. And this year we're also doing Silver Angels, so folks can also register to help support and also register for the program if there's a senior in their area as well.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, Major Izwahe, we know that last year the needs over Christmas were tremendous. They're probably going to be pretty high again this year. How else are we preparing to help serve these families in our area?
Christmas is one of the most important seasons to help families that they can feel Salvation Army close to them. Again, we are preparing a very dynamic system to support the families in all that kind of area that we already mentioned. That means that we are already prepared. There is a very important involvement and partnership with the donors that we need their support during Christmas and fundraising. That means that it's a very important season to continue being close to our community needs, and we are already prepared for that. That means that, in other words, all the system is in place right now. We are planning the effort in order to prepare the Christmas food basket plus that kind of social services program for families and children is amazing. And there are excellent team, volunteers, advisory board members, local partners, donors. This is a tremendous effort in order to provide to the community protection, hope, and love, and compassion.
Absolutely. Hope, love, and compassion are 3 big ones. We're getting a question in right now. Let's see. When it comes to disaster preparedness, Major, can you offer tips for how a family can be prepared, whether it's maybe a kit or being up to date on what they need to know?
Well, I think from my perspective, probably the greatest challenge for a family is to have a game plan to face the reality that something could happen to their home and to their family. During a fire, house fire as an example, the greatest fatality among parents is those who return inside, who try to go back into their home to save a child that may be left inside, and they lose their life. So some very simple practical things. As an example, have a designated location outside of the home where the family can gather so they know everybody is safe and not going to be harmed by the event. And not just to have that plan together, but to practice that plan. That is so key that it's just, it may be a very simple thing, but a very important piece as well. And be cognizant of the age groups of children in terms of what they hear and what they see, to try and minimize any concerns that kids bring to the table, so to speak. Just making sure that you're looking out for each other as a family and that you have a solid plan that can be realistically practiced on a consistent basis.
And we have someone interested, how can I become a volunteer at EDS?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Come on over.
Yeah.
All you need to do is just, if you let us know of your interest, if you send us a communication or give us a call, we will be ready to engage you. We have a great volunteer coordinator for our EDS program who really immediately responds to any inquiries that we have. He really takes time to understand who you are, what your interests are, what you'd like to, areas that you might want to be a part of contributing. For instance, we do a lot of major food preparation around these events, obviously. Some folks love to prepare food. We're not going to put you in another part of our operation when we know that you're good at that gift, if that's something you'd like to do. So we really evaluate your skills, your capabilities, and most importantly, your interests. We want you to do something that you're really interested in doing. What is really neat, and let me just simply say up front, as a volunteer, you will find a reward that very few people really understand, and that is by doing for others what comes your way in terms of satisfaction and fulfillment, and being a part of that idea of ministry of presence is so rewarding. It's just an exciting piece. So you let us know of your interest, and I promise you we have a place already for you.
Speaking of volunteers, we will need bell ringers. We will need other people to help with Christmas efforts. Can you speak to some of those needs too?
Again, I want to reinforce that we are working in a system that transforms people's life. That means that all people that want to be part of that transformation process are welcome. Volunteers, donors, we have the Angel Tree donors or another donor that they are providing funding to the Army. They are part of the transformational process. They are invited. They have 28 corps plus 7 institutions in Metropolitan Division that they can approach to us coming, and they, of course, they will start for a process to apply for volunteer work, but they are more than welcome. Without volunteers, it's impossible that Salvation Army can accomplish the mission successfully. That means that we invite in this time that all people, bell ringers, they are part of the task force. They are not just raising money in a corner. They are part, they are helping, for each dollar that we are raising in Christmas, 85 cents are going directly to social services program. This is very important to know the social investment that we are doing. That means that it's tremendous effort. Christmas is a beautiful time for giving, not just money, but giving effort and support. And that's we are expecting to have in this year, specifically when the pandemic is affecting more families, more volunteers. Without volunteers, it's impossible that we can accomplish our mission.
Absolutely, and you spoke to the efficiency of those donations. Also, the Red Kettle dollars stay in that area. So if someone donates, they're helping their neighbors.
Yes, that is absolutely the accountability and stewardship system in the Army is very diligent in order to invest in families in our communities. That means that all the money that we will raise in Chicago will stay here, transforming people's life.
Absolutely. Well, and if someone wants to volunteer, you can also reach out to your gift representative. They will connect you with our volunteer team here at Divisional Headquarters, Susie and Amber, who can connect you to a location that's convenient for you. If you have a specific program that you want to be involved in, maybe it's after-school programming or something else that you particularly want to help with, they can get you to the right person, the right location. We'll put out a call for any more questions that we have here ahead of our time wrapping up. If you want, submit them over Zoom, Q&A for our experts. Anything else to add that we didn't touch on that you want to tell our donors and supporters today? In the meantime.
Well, I guess I would like to.
Sure.
It's something I don't share often, but I often get a question from folks, how come you're involved in EDS services? And it goes back into my officer career very early on as a young lieutenant up in Crookston, Minnesota, small community 90 miles from the Canadian border. And it was a Saturday night. I heard the sirens go off in town. The volunteer fire department responded. There was a vehicle accident where a car went off the bridge into a river, and unfortunately 4 teens that were out partying lost their lives that night, and for 2.5, 3 days they searched for their bodies. As a young Salvation Army officer, I didn't know what to do. So I simply got some coffee together, some donuts, some sandwiches, and put them in the back of what was then known as a station wagon, and went to the scene. And I found first responders there huddling together as they were trying to do their search and work so diligently. And I simply, for hours thereafter, provided some nourishment and some hydration to folks who were giving their very best. I wasn't sure at the time if that made any real difference until a couple weeks after the funerals. I got a note from one of the moms, and she said to me, "Lieutenant Dahlberg, thank you for being there for us when we couldn't be there. What you gave our family will be something that will be a part of us forever." That defined my life in terms of my calling to serve, particularly in this field of horrendous disaster activity with pain, suffering, sorrow, that I would have the opportunity, the privilege to be present and to be able to share in people's lives at the most difficult day of their life. And what an honor it's been.
Another part is that Salvation Army is taking high responsibility in order to protect our volunteers if they are part, providing the personal protection equipment and also a safe place. That means that people, they have the opportunity to do a remarkable work. Sometimes we are paralyzed contemplating the crisis. The only way to overcome crisis is be part of that crisis, helping others. And all of us have a personal story. My story or my testimony in the Army is I met the Army during Christmas. And like the founder, William Booth said, I found my destiny together with my family, helping. That means that it's a transformational experience when you are part of this process, of this system to help families to find hope. You know what is the theme for this year is Hope Marches On. This is a beautiful theme in what all people, they are welcome without any kind of restriction or religious. All people are coming because we are a family to help families.
We actually just got a question, Major, for you. Do you serve only Christians or all faiths?
No, we are, the Salvation Army is a wonderful field. and what people they can find the love of Jesus and the love and compassion, hope, that's kind of values to transform life. We are open to receive all people with different belief and religious thinking in order to be part of this army. The only thing in common that we have with all organizations with different thoughts and belief is that we have the common goal is helping families. And all Salvation Army historically has been part of many organizations. During the emergency disaster, Major Dalbert know that we are working in a team environment with different organizations, and we are very respectful to assess and to work together with one goal: bring relief and hope and compassion to the families.
Absolutely. Akia, Major Izwahe, Major Dahlberg, thank you so much for your time today. And thank you for everyone for joining us on Zoom. If you need any more information or want to help, please reach out to your gift representative.